Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss lecture number 4 of the chapter Computer Networks. Before we start with the topics, students, you are requested to please comment on the video regarding any doubts, queries, or having any problem so that we should be able to rectify any sort of problem that you are facing with the video quality or anything else, and regarding your doubts with a certain topic. So please do not forget to write your comments, and even if you get your comments, do not forget to write that you have fully understood the current topic. So now we start with the next topic, that is cloud computing. So the cloud computing is the latest networking technology that we are using as of now. In our day-to-day lives, we are using cloud or cloud computing almost in many applications that we use, especially on our mobile phones. As we all know that a mobile phone is also a type of computer, so the mobiles are also covered under the computing resources. Now, what is cloud computing? Cloud computing can be defined as delivering computing power, that is, using CPU, RAM, network speeds, storage of software, service over the network. That means you can use another computer's hardware to accomplish any task over the internet or over the network. Generally, internet, a wide area network. Some examples of the cloud computing softwares are the Google, Azure, AWS. As we all see that whatever search engines that we are using are clouds only. The email network that we have on various email service providers are also a sort of cloud. Now, a cloud is a set of different types of hardware and software that work collectively to deliver many aspects of computing to the end user as an online service. So, whatever software or hardware that we use over the internet, they are covered under the cloud network. So, they are basically used to provide some sort of service to the end user, that is a client, that is you. Now, the cloud computing is the use of hardware and software to deliver a service over the network, typically the internet. With cloud computing, users can access files, use applications from any device that can access the internet. Now, the main power of using the cloud computing is that you can use a cloud to access your files or some other resources from anywhere in the world. For example, you use an email and you can open your email, you can access your email from anywhere on through any computer. An example of cloud computing provider is Google Gmail. As I said earlier, also, Gmail is a very fine and most popular example of using a cloud computing resource. Gmail users can access files and applications hosted by Google via the internet from any device. Anything that you use over the Google network, that is YouTube or this email or any application designed by Google, is generally used on the cloud network. Now this is the structure of cloud network, where you can see we have our end user devices like laptops, servers, desktops, tablets, mobile phones, and all these services right from application, platform, and infrastructure, they all are covered under the cloud. So we do not need so many files and everything to be stored on a particular machine. That is the main advantage of using a cloud. Now, how is cloud computing different from computing from PC's hard drive? Now, what is the difference between storing your files and other applications on your personal computer's hard disk and using a cloud? What is the main difference between them? Now, unlike traditional computing where data is stored on your PC local hard drive, the data in the cloud is stored on many physical and virtual servers that are hosted by third-party service providers. So, in this type of computing, we are using a sort of PC uh, which is located remotely. And the main advantage of using a cloud is that you can access the cloud anywhere in the world from any particular remote computer. It is not mandatory that you access your files from your local computer itself. So that is the main advantage of using the. Now the history of cloud computing. Now how was the concept of this cloud computing evolved? Now cloud computing is a term that has been uh, you know derived, or uh, that has been used firstly in the uh, early 2000s, after the year 2000. But the concept of computing as a service has been around for much longer. So computing as a service, where you can uh, you know download different softwares, resources, and drivers and others files, that is from a very quite long time. But uh, say cloud computing, that means storing your files not on your hard disk but to some other hard disk on a service provider. This time sharing services were largely overtaken by rise of PCs, which made owning a computer much more affordable, and then in turn by the rise of corporate data centers where companies would store vast amount of data. Now, earlier there were not too many computers used, and therefore there was not the requirement of these types of services. But as the IT industry grown, the there are several companies who came in the field, and they started creating their servers to store data, that is vast amount of data. But the concept of renting access to computer power has resurfaced again and again in the application service providers, utility computing, and grid computing of the late 90s and early 2000. Now the concept of providing a service, a paid service for storing the data, you know, that was, going on from earlier also, and you were being charged to access that service. This was followed by cloud computing, which really took hold with the emergence of software as a service and hyperscale cloud computing providers such as Amazon Web Services. Now, this concept was again taken over by, as we had studied also earlier, that internet was under a limited span, it was chargeable, and thereafter now the internet is chargeable but by the ISP only. So there is no cost of using an internet. The services on the internet are totally free of cost. Therefore, with the growing popularity of the computing services, it was uh, mm, uh, it was need of the hour to provide the softwares as service, and to promote the cloud computing where the user can download or use the services of a third client. Now, why the name cloud? Why did we, you know, mm, name access to remote hardware and software as cloud? Now, the term cloud came from a network design that was used by network engineers to represent the location of various network devices and their interconnection. The shape of this network design was like a cloud. Now, see, there are different types of, service providers in the world, and they gather together under a cloud. They provide their services under the same network, and this network was named as cloud. So the architecture of this type of network was something like a cloud. Now there are many types of clouds: private cloud, community clouds, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. Now, first of all, private clouds. The private cloud uh, is a type of cloud uh, that is dedicated to a particular organization. Now, this type of cloud is using the services which are provided to the members of this particular organization, and the services used by them is only operated by the members of the organization and is governed by the organization itself. There is no hold of any external person or organization on these particular clouds. Then we have community cloud. Now here the computing resources are provided for the community and organization. Now uh, a community cloud is a broader concept of having a cloud uh, in which we are doing for a community and some organization. Now this is limited to an organization and a community. Public clouds. Now this type of clouds is used for business to consumer. These types of clouds, like we have online shopping and everything, and then we have emails. So these types of clouds are known as public clouds, where the clouds may be owned by a private organization, but the access of this cloud is open to a normal public. Hybrid cloud. Now this type of cloud can be used for both types of interactions, business and business to consumer. Now hybrid cloud is a combination of a business to consumer type of cloud and a business to business type of cloud. This deployment method is called hybrid cloud, as the computing resources are bound together by different clouds. Now, when a particular business is, dependent or is under a coalition of some other business, and they provide, and together they provide some, service to a particular consumer, this type of cloud is known as a hybrid cloud. Now, services by a cloud. Basically, the there are a number of services that are provided by a cloud. So we can categorize these services under three types: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. So all the services given by any sort of cloud fall either uh, under one of these services. This is the structure of having a cloud computing. Now, services by cloud. The first cloud computing service, that is infrastructure as a service, which is used for internet-based access to storage and computing power. Now, this type of service gives you the infrastructure to run your computing services like software, storage. They provide you an a remote hardware resource where you can save your files, documents onto the service provider's hardware. The most basic category of cloud computing type, IaaS, lets you rent IT infrastructure, servers and virtual machines. storage, networks, and operating system from a cloud provider on a pay-as-you-go basis. Now, this type of services are, they are chargeable, and they provide you an infrastructure on a very nominal cost where you can utilize, uh, service of having a, uh, storage or some other hardware computing power resources on some other service providers network. Services by cloud. The second cloud computing type is a platform as a service that gives developers the tools to build, host, and web applications. Now, the second is the platform as a service. This type of service gives you a platform where you can develop a software or some applications, and you can use it to upload these applications so that the whole world can use these applications and uh, you know uh, onto their systems and make use of these applications. Now, PaaS is designed to give users access to components they require to quickly develop and operate web and mobile applications over the internet. Now, as we all know that as of now there is very extensive use of the mobile phones, and day to day we are experiencing new apps for each and everything. So these are the applications, these are the services which are provided by cloud computing to develop new applications on the cloud. Now, these applications can have storage, networks, and databases on the internet. Now, the third type of cloud computing is a type of uh, software as a service. Here, some applications are designed which may be online applications. That means where you can work on these applications online. Now, it is a method of delivering software applications over the internet where cloud providers host and manage the software applications, making it easier to have the same application on all of your devices at once by accessing it in the cloud. Now, you can use these applications online or offline for accomplish for the accomplishment of your task. Now, the email is an example of the same type of service where you can use a particular software or some other type of services like antivirus, updating an antivirus. So all these services are provided to you by the services or the software as a. Now, how does the cloud storage work? Now, in the cloud storage, you have all these applications which are stored on a particular server or a virtual server on the service providers organization. And whenever you connect to the internet and you connect to this server, then you are access to uh, you know use that data and files, as well as you can download data on your personal device. Now, cloud storage users can also edit documents simultaneously with other users as well, making it easier to work away from the office. Now, from the flexibility of working from anywhere in the world, you have the facility to access as well as manipulate your data from any machine in the world. Depending on specific needs, prices vary for cloud storage. Now, some services on the cloud are free of cost. That means they are not chargeable, like we see in the case of Google services. But there are some services where you can use the cloud storage on a chargeable basis. However, these charges are quite nominal. These prices can be paid monthly or yearly depending on the services and the type of services that you are using. Yes, to understand the concept of these are divided into two sections, the front end and the back end. Now the front end is connected to the back end through the network. The front end is the side of the computer user or the client. That means the user of the computer is known as the front end, which sees the files or resources at his system's monitor or resource. So that is the front end of the user, and the back end is the cloud section of the system. And back end is the server or the cloud where the files or the services are stored physically. The front end consists of client's computer or computer network, also the application essential to access the cloud computing system. It is not necessary that all cloud computing systems have the same user interface. Now, uh, the front end generally is the client's computer or the client's computer network. It is not a uh, it is not a compulsion that the computer network in the front end is a single computer. It may be a type of LAN also, which can connect to the cloud. In the back end of the cloud technology system, there are various computers, servers, and data storage systems that make up the cloud. So, at the back end, depending on the service, there are servers or some database servers. They are mainframes which are used to provide the service to the front end users. Now, how and who manages the cloud technology? Now, the central server manages the cloud system. There is a server which manages whole of the cloud system, and generally this server reside at the backend. Its purpose is to manage traffic and client demands to ensure everything runs smoothly. So the main function of this server is to manage the traffic and to provide services to the the front end users as per their demands. It pursues a set of rules called protocols. So we are going to study about the protocols later on. So protocols are the set of rules that are followed to access uh, some resource or file over the internet, and uses a special kind of software known as middleware. So there is an application software which is in between the front end and the back end, which is known as middleware, where middleware permits networked computers to communicate with each other. Now, as you can see, whenever we are trying to access the email through Gmail, so we have some authentication type of page where we give our username and password, and this type of software which is used to access the database, which are the database which is stored on the service provider, that is Google's network. So we have that particular middleware or the software which is used to access the services under the cloud. Now, advantages and disadvantages of cloud computing. Now, cloud computing is a very popular and widely used part of our day-to-day lives, and we use this technology to access various resources over the internet. And as of now, the on-premise technology, that is storing local files and resources, has become less popular. Whether in a public, private, or hybrid, whatever sort of cloud is there, everybody is trying to use the cloud rather than having everything, every storage locally on their system. So cloud computing has become essential factor for companies to rise up to the competition. So nowadays, as of business houses are there, it is quite the need of the hour to use the cloud computing technology. Now, advantages of cloud computing. The very first thing is cost efficiency. So, having the files on a local computer, having the files on the local computer includes, installation of many hardware, having, everything locally placed on the computer, uh, you know, can give you an extra cost of having software and hardware. Whereas using the services over cloud computing rather than having it on the premise reduces the cost to a very great extent. Secondly, high speed. Now the speed of having, uh, you know, uh, you know, transferring the data over the network through cloud is very fast as compared to, uh, you know, transferring the data from on-premise local machine. Excellent accessibility. So there are many types of, accessibility checks as well as, you know, uh, to safeguard your data. And secondly, the storage information, the storage of your information is quite, feasible, as we can access our data from anywhere or at any point of time. So these servers are 24 by 7 working all the time, and we have the access to our data at any point of time. Unlike your on-premise data, where you have to be in nearness to the local machine and you are restricted to access your data from the same particular machine. Now, backup and restore data. Now, if a particular local machine malfunctions, then it is quite possible that your data may be lost. But in case of cloud, all the data backups are managed by the service providers, and there is very less chances of losing your data. And whenever, if any of the your local hardware fails or local software fails, then the data can be recovered from the cloud service. Now, manageability. Now, to have all the resources at a local platform, uh, ask for regular updates and maintenance. But having these services placed on a cloud gives you a freedom from maintaining and upgrading your hardware and software. So all these services are managed by the service provider itself, and the local or the end user or the front end user has no concern with the updation or maintenance of this type of services. Now, batch processing. Now, here again there is an advantage that we are free to use any service at any point of time. So it is not mandatory that if a service provider is connected to an end user or the front end user, then the front end user has to use all the services of the service provider. Rather, it has the option of using the required service while ignoring the not required services. As we can see in case of Google, if I do not want to use suppose YouTube, so I am not forced to use YouTube. I can only use the Gmail software. So that is the flexibility. Now, strategic edge. Now, cloud computing provides a company with competitive edge over the competitors when it becomes accessing the latest mission critical applications that it needs without having to invest its time and money on their installations. Now, having a online service, any company which is providing an online service or all types of services online, they are in competition with a company which do not provide online services. Now, as you can see, now Microsoft and Google both are type of service providers, but Microsoft do not provide uh, that much of services or the flexibility in services as Google does. So the popularity of Google is more than the uh, you know the cloud services provided by Microsoft network. So here the uh, the companies which are providing these sort of services are into a competition, a healthy competition, where the user has the advantage of using the services from a number of organizations. Now the disadvantages of computing, of cloud computing. Now, as we can see that anything which has an advantage generally has some or the other disadvantages also. So, as we have positive aspects of using these, cloud computing concepts, we have the disadvantages also. Now, what kind of disadvantages are there? Firstly, vulnerability to attacks. Now, the data which are stored on a cloud are quite vulnerable, or they are, helpless in case of attacks by some hackers or crackers, where the information of a particular service provider can be hacked by some, uh, you know, uh, bad intentional people. So, the storage of personal information or some confidential information over these types of networks is quite risky. Second, network connectivity dependency. Now, supposingly, if the network of the service provider is down, then you are helpless in that case, and you are totally dependent on the network service provider. So, if the network service provider is not able to provide you the proper service at a particular point of time, then the end user or the front end user do not, uh, you know he cannot do anything in this particular problem. Downtime. Now, downtime is considered as one of the biggest potential downsides of using cloud computing. So it is the main disadvantage of using a cloud computing. The cloud may providers may sometimes face technical outages that can happen due to various reasons, such as loss of power, low internet connectivity, data centers going out of service for maintenance, etc. So generally, when the service providers are undergoing some maintenance of their network or their hardware, or having some problems with regard to the connectivity, then the front end user till that particular time is unable to use the services and access his files or resources as per the demands. Now, vendor lock-in. When in need of migrate from one cloud platform to another, a company might face some serious issues because of the difference between vendor platforms. Hosting and running applications of the current cloud perform on other uh, uh, platform may cause support issues, configuration complexities, and other expenses. Now, while a front end user is using a particular cloud, and if he tries to migrate his previous and old accounts to a new service provider, then he might face some problems, the connectivity problems, maybe some configuration problems, or some support problems. So this is again a major disadvantage of using a cloud network, that limited control. Now again, there is again a disadvantage, that the resource that the end user is trying to use, he might have a very limited control over these resources, unlike if the resource was stored on his particular machine itself, where he could get the full access or the control on the particular uh, resource. Now this is the structure of uh, cloud computing. Now the front end, as we have studied earlier also, the front end consists of client part of computing system. It comprises of interfaces, applications that are required to access the cloud computing platform, while the back end refers to the cloud itself. It comprises of the resources that are required for cloud computing resources. It consists of virtual machines, server, data storage, security mechanism, etc. It is under provider's control. So the front end is only it only has an interface to connect to the cloud, but it does not have anything which can be stored locally onto his machine, or is limited uh, to only some of the information that can be stored locally on his computer. The backend is the cloud, where all the resources, files are stored, and these comprise of the virtual machines, servers, storage servers, mainframes, and some security checks, and the full control of this whole cloud computing mechanism is under the service provider only. So, students, I hope you got this topic. So, it is thank you from this side, and please do not forget to comment on the topic that is given, and please provide comments on the previous loaded lectures also, so that we are able to identify if you are experiencing some problem regarding some the quality of uh, these lectures, or some other doubts and queries. Thank you very much.